Bible Club, it's Bible Club, it's Bible Club in our town. There's singing, there's laughing, let's get the word on the ground. You're all excited, we are all delighted. It's Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club in our town.
I think everybody has had this happen, but I wanted to see what you... Can you remember a time when you did something that you weren't supposed to do? Okay, like your parents had a rule in the house, or your teacher has a rule in the classroom, and you knew what the rule was, but you still broke the rule. How many have ever done that? Yeah, me too. Alright, so, and what's it called when you break the rule? It is a sin, but what's the name of that? Disobedience, that's right. Disobedience. Now, when that happens, let's just say it's in our house. Our parents have a rule, we don't do this or don't do that, and you know what the rule is, and you still break the rule. The Bible teaches that parents are to punish their children when they disobey. It's not fun, but it's done. The Bible tells us that they punish us to help us. It's painful in the moment, but then we remember the next time we want to do our own thing and we decide, I'm going to obey this time. Hopefully we decide that. But, so, how many have been punished? Some type of punishment by your parents or by your teacher because you did something wrong? Yes. Okay. Now, when we were punished, did that mean that our parents hated us? No. Does that mean that our teacher hated us? No.
I have a story.
Well, I'm telling the story right now. Normally I'm about finishing the story and we're just starting, so we can't go too long. I got to move along. But, so, when we disobey and we get punished, it's not because the person that punishes us hates us. Really, it's because they don't want us to do that wrong thing again. They want us to learn to be obedient. And we have been learning for several weeks now about a certain nation, the nation that was God's people. The nation of, how many can say it? The nation of, Ian said it, how many else can say it? The nation of, Aaron said it. Ian and Aaron and the rest of you, we've been talking about God's people, the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel.
I don't know what it was.
And so, the nation of Israel were God's people, so God had rules for the nation of Israel, didn't He? Do we know what the rules are that God had for the nation of Israel? We can't know what they are, can't we? Because God wrote His rules down, didn't He? He wrote His rules in the Bible. The Old Testament is in particular for Israel, but even we can learn from those rules. So God had His rules, and the people of Israel, they knew what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to worship Him. Were they supposed to worship anything else? No. What was it? What was it called, or what are some other things that maybe sometimes they did worship and they weren't supposed to? Idols. Idols, false gods. Yes. And an idol is something that, you can see, right? It's made of wood, maybe it's covered with gold. It has eyes, but can it see?
No.
No. It has hands, but can it do anything? No. It has a mouth carved in there, but does it say anything?
No.
No. It's just an idol. But for some reason, the people around the Israelites worshipped idols, and the Israelites sometimes they wanted to do like the people around them. How many of you have ever done that? The people around you were doing something, and you kind of knew your parents wouldn't want you to do that, but you were with your friends, and it was easier to do what they were doing than what your parents wanted. That's kind of like what Israel was doing. It was easier to act like the people around them than to do what God wanted them to do. If they did what God wanted them to do, they would be considered different. The people looked at them and say, you guys are weird. And it's not fun being weird. We would much rather fit in. But God had given rules. He said, if you do these things, I will bless you. But if you do these things, I will punish you. I will curse you even. I will punish you. So what happened? The children of Israel, they did these things. And so then what happened? They got punished. And what did God use, or who did God use to punish the children of Israel? What? I'm sorry? Okay.
She said self.
His self? Okay. He punished them, but he used... Yes?
He killed them.
But he didn't just go kill them. He
used the town of the bad guy's town.
The bad guys' town.
And
They're enemies.
And come every one of the week when the place starts growing and
Yeah. Yeah, that was the Midianites with Gideon. Yeah. But he would use different nations, other nations around him. And sometimes, often, you remember who it was when Samson was the judge? Who was the people that God was using to judge Israel that Samson fought against? Moses, you think you remember? You remember Samson, though, don't you? Do you remember the people? So Samson fought for Israel, and who was God using to punish Israel when Samson? Hard question. Ellie is older and has had lots of Bible training. What do you think, Ellie?
Sarah, the Philistines.
The Philistines. We remember the Philistines, right? So the Philistines. And the Philistines, God was using the Philistines again to punish the children of Israel. The Philistines, they would just do whatever they wanted. They would come into our town, if we were Israelites, and they might just see you and say, they might see Anthony and say, he looks like a good hard worker. We're going to take him to live with us. It says take you out of your home.
Was it good pay?
No, it was no pay. It was slavery. It was slavery. It was not good pay at all. What? Oh, we have a slow dead fly. Well, it was dead about the moment I stepped on it, right? Okay, anyway. Okay. God used the Philistines to punish Israel. Now, when God punishes Israel, what should they do? What should they do? Anthony?
Capture them? Take them? Kill them possibly?
Well, they should try, but if God is punishing Israel, what should Israel do?
Obey.
They should turn back to God. Yeah, they should start obeying. But they didn't. One time, the Philistines came with their soldiers, and they were like coming to attack and maybe steal some more people and take them off to be slaves of theirs. And the Israelites were like, we're going to fight against them. They didn't think we should pray. They didn't think maybe God is punishing us and we should turn back to God. They didn't think anything like that. They just said, we're going to fight. So they got a bunch of their soldiers together and they went out to fight against the Israelites. And you think they went out to fight, the Israelites went to fight against the Philistines. Do you think they beat them up? Do you think they won that battle?
Nope.
Nope, they didn't. They used to win battles when God was with them, but was God with them now? No, God was punishing them. If they had turned back to Him, He might be with them, but He was not with them because He was punishing them. In fact, they went into battle, and pretty soon they started losing, and it wasn't like losing on a video game. People were really dying. 4,000 men, 4,000 soldiers died. And they came back to the camp and they thought, wow, we got hurt bad. We lost lots of men. Lots of wives and children no longer had husbands or dads. And they thought, we gotta do something. And one of them thought, I know what we can do. We can take the ark. The Ark of the Covenant. If we take the Ark of the Covenant with us, that will help us win. Do you remember what the Ark of the Covenant is? Aaron, do you remember it?
Something that God, I know it's something that remind people about God.
Yeah, you remember, we talked about it. So it was a box about 4 feet wide, about 2 feet deep, and 2 feet tall. And inside the box was the 10 Commandments. And it was made of wood, but it was covered with, what do you think was inside and out? It was covered with gold. That's right. And then it had a special lid. And the lid was called the mercy seat. And out the ends of the lid came golden angels carved. Okay? And that box, that Ark of the Covenant, does anybody know where it was kept? Do you remember where it was kept? Not in a closet. Cody? In the tabernacle. Which part of the tabernacle? Remember, there was the big courtyard, and then there was the holy place, and then there was the Holy of Holies. What part of the tabernacle was the Ark of the Covenant kept in? The most holy place. It was there. Now, who could go into the most holy place? Aaron?
A preacher.
A preacher? Well, it had to be a priest, but could any priest go into the most holy place? No. The head priest.
They need to come every week.
The high priest, and he could come every year, not every week. He could only go in there once a year. So that was something, you didn't just go take the ark. But the Israelites are like, we need something to beat the Philistines. Let's go get the ark. The ark was something special, but it was special because God's presence, remember the cloud and the fire, God's presence sat above, on the mercy seat above the ark. So, I don't think it was even there right now because God wasn't with his people. They were disobeying. But they thought, let's get the ark. So, they sent back to the tabernacle. Does anybody remember the names of the 2 priests that were there? Eli's sons. Last week we talked about Eli's sons. Eli's sons Hophni and Phinehas. Right. And they were still alive at this time in the story. And they went back to get they sent word, and Hophni and Phinehas came, and they were carrying the Ark of the Covenant. And as soon as the Ark of the Covenant came into the camp of the Israelites, everybody started shouting. They were like, we're going to win now. Nothing can beat us because we have the ark. Remember the ark? It went around the walls of Jericho and the walls fell down. Did the ark make the walls of Jericho fall down?
No, God did.
No. Remember the ark? It just went right into the Jordan River and the river passed back. Did the ark make the river of Jordan split? No.
God did.
God did. But they were thinking wrong, weren't they? They were like, we got the ark, we're going to win. And so the next day they went out in the Philistines, they were so excited, the Philistines could hear them all the way across the valley. What are they all so excited about? So they sent some scouts out, and the scouts were looking, and they came back and said, they got the ark. And a bunch of the Philistine soldiers are like, oh no, they got the ark. We've heard about that ark. That ark went around the walls of Jericho, and the walls fell down. And that ark, now they're Philistines. They're idol worshippers. They think all the power's they think this is an idol like their idol. So they were scared, but their general said, you better not get too scared. If you lose, you're going to be slaves to the Israelites. We don't want to be slaves to the Israelites. We want them to be our slaves. And so they got real brave and excited and ran out and they went to war. They went to battle. And who do you think won? The ark? The Philistines. The Philistines won. They beat the Israelites. And they captured the ark. They captured the ark. They were all excited. Now they have the ark. And when they captured the ark, they killed the 2 men that were carrying the ark. Who was carrying the ark? Remember the 2 men carrying the ark? Hophni and Phinehas. And they were the priests. Were they good priests?
No.
No, remember last week? They were evil. They were bad. They were really bad. And so word came back to the tabernacle. Who do you think was the old man waiting back at the tabernacle? The high priest. Hophni and Phinehas' dad. And word came back, and when he heard that his sons died, but the Bible says that when he heard that the Ark of the Covenant was taken, he fell off his chair backwards. I think it was more like a stool with no back. He fell off of it, and the Bible says he broke his neck, and he died. So Eli and Hophni and Phinehas all died in the same day. Do you remember that God sent a prophet to Eli and told him that because he had honored his sons instead of honoring him, his sons would die in the same day? Yeah. So what God says comes true, doesn't it? We should remember that. Well, anyway, the Philistines, they were like, we got the ark. I don't know how they were saying it, but I'm just thinking they were like, we got the ark. Now we got two gods. We got our God and we got their God. And so they brought the ark, and they put the ark in with their God. Now, we talked about it, but you might not remember. Their God's name was Dagon. And Dagon, he wasn't a god, but they thought he was a god. Dagon had, from his waist up, he was a man. And from his waist down, he was a fish. There's no such thing. There's no such thing, even though you might think of something when I say waist up a person and waist down a fish. There's no such thing. But they worshiped something called Dagon. And so now they took the ark, Israel, what they thought was Israel's God, and put them right next to their God. And I don't know what they were thinking, but I'm thinking they were like, now we got two gods. We have our God. Our God helped us beat the Israelites, but now we have our God and the Israelites' God. Nobody's going to beat us now. I don't know what they thought, but they put the Ark of the Covenant in with their God. And the Ark of the Covenant is not a God. But the Philistines, they thought of it that way. And God decided he wanted to teach the Philistines something. So everybody, word was going around town, you will not believe it, we got the Israelites' God, he's in the temple. And so the next morning they went there to look at their God, worship their God because he was so great, and look at Israel's God. And you know what? Their God, who normally stands, I don't know how he stands on his fins, but he stands, and he was not standing. Their idol was down on the ground, his face on the ground, in front of the ark. It was almost like he was down on the ground, worshiping the Ark of the Covenant. Now, I'm thinking, whoa, Dagon, what are you doing down there? Or you think they talked to him? I don't know. But Dagon couldn't get up by himself, right? Because he's an idol. If he was a god, he could do things, but he's just an idol. So they picked Dagon back up, and they put him back up there next to the Ark of the Covenant, and they were like, that was kind of strange, but we still got Dagon, and we got Israelites' God, the Ark. It's kind of a funny-looking God to them, but we got him. Next day, some other people came in to look at the Ark, and where do you think Dagon was? Back down on the ground, and this time, wait a second, so this is the first time. There he is, face down on the ground. This time, he was face down, but his face wasn't even attached to his body. His head was broken off, and his hands were broken off. God was sending a symbol. He was sending a message. There's no other gods beside me. And so, at the same time, this was the city of Ashdod, the Philistine city of Ashdod. At the same time, all the men in that city got terrible boils. How many ever had a boil? Not very many. Now I heard somebody saying, how many of you ever had a splinter? Okay, and if the splinter stays in your skin, it gets to be pussy and all that. It's almost like a boil, kind of. Not nearly as bad. But if you had something like that in 6 or 7 or 8 places on your body, ouch! That would hurt. And all the men in the city, they got that. And plus, all of a sudden, they start looking around their town and out in the fields, and there's mice everywhere. And the mice are eating their food. Now, that's not good. That's not good. First of all, you want to eat their food, your food. But even if the mice leave you some food, you don't want to eat after mice, right? Nasty. No. Where do you think those mice came from?
The sewer.
That God was judging them. He's saying, you think your God is greater than me? You don't know. He sent mice, he sent boils. And so the men of Ashdod, they said, I think this is because of the ark. We're going to send them over to Gath. So they sent the Ark of the Covenant over to another town. And so it came into their town, and what do you think happened there? And all the men got sores and boils all over their body, very, very painful, mice. And they said, we got to get rid of this. So they took the ark and they started sending it to another one of their big cities. And the people saw, here comes the ark. What do you think they said? Oh no, keep that thing away from us. But before it got close, people died. They said, we don't want this ark with us. We should send it back to Israel. So they got themselves a wagon. They got themselves a wagon. They put the ark on the wagon, and they made some golden mice as an offering, and somehow they made it golden boils. I don't know, but they was like, we got to do something so that this God, he stops messing with us. They put it on a wagon, and they put 2 cows in front of the wagon, hooked it up, and said, we're just going to watch. If the wagon goes back to Israel, then we'll know that that was from God. If it just kind of wanders around, we'll just know it was a freak accident. What do you think? Where do you think that wagon went? It went straight back to Israel, and so they're like, all that was from God. Now, when the ark came back to Israel, you think they were happy to get their ark back? They were. They were happy. The Israelites were happy to get their ark back. But something strange happened. They saw it, it came to a town, and you would think, oh, there's the ark, let's take it back where it belongs. That's what I kind of think they should have done. But they didn't. They were just happy, and then they just said, well, why don't we just keep it at your house? Some men even looked inside it. They thought, oh, what's in it? And God punished them. So then they just put it in this guy's house, and they got his son to take care of it. Who's supposed to take care of the ark? The priests. But they didn't send it back to the devil. It just sat in that person's house. And so the children of Israel continued to do their own thing. The stories I'm telling you now are from the same time period, the same thing as in Judges. Remember in Judges? Every man did what? Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. And that's what we have going on here. These people, they just did what was right in their own eyes. Some people did what was right. Remember? Samuel and Hannah and Elkanah. They really did what was right in God's eyes because that's what they wanted. But other people, they just did what was right in their eyes. And when you do what's right in your eyes, whether you are in a family or a nation, it doesn't turn out good, does it? There's a way, what did our verse say 2 times ago? There's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end thereof is the ways of death. And God punishes those that go their own way and don't follow Him, especially His own people. Now, we don't have time. We'll just pick it up there because we have even more. Well, we have some returning to God and forgiveness, and then we have some more disobedience of the nation of Israel that we're going to talk about next week. So, but why am I telling you about all this disobedience? Is it so that you will go out and disobey? Oh, no. I don't want you to go out and disobey. We need to learn when you disobey, it's bad, so I'm not going to disobey. I want you to obey. I want you to obey your parents. I want you to obey your teachers, whether it's your teachers at church or teachers at school. Any authority, if a policeman comes along, you obey the policeman. Doesn't matter what he says, he's the authority. Okay? Doesn't matter. If he does something wrong, there's ways to take care of that. But right then, when he says, you do this, you do it, because he's the authority. It's not good when you disobey authority. God teaches us that disobedience is wrong. And these lessons are not so that we can just decide to disobey, so that we learn to obey. And we're not to disobey the Lord, we're to fear the Lord, right? And serve Him in truth with all of our heart.